Hey guys, it's Lyon again, this time with a tutorial based on what my feedback was from all of you. I put a Facebook post out there a couple days ago asking all of you what you wanted to see next for the tutorial. By and large, I got the feedback that everyone wanted to see how I color graded specifically Timberline. Also, in a close second was how I deal with log footage. So what I thought I'd do is some of those are so close and sometimes overlapping that I do my best to try to cover them in a tutorial all in one and hopefully not have it drag on that long. What I am going to do is start off here in Final Cut Pro and tell you how I did that. I'm going to show you again how I do that without any additional plugins, which isn't the easiest, isn't the method that I prefer. But again, I don't know what type of budget constraints all of you are on, but I'm going to show you that way, and then I'm going to show you the way that I would prefer to do it, which does involve some plugins that don't break the bank, but I think that, you know, it absolutely will make your workflow easier and will give you some better results. So again, what I'm going to do is we're going to start here by looking at our interface here in Final Cut Pro 10. This is the timeline for the Timberline, but what I'm going to do is start off by looking at this image of my wife that I shot with the Sony FS7 in, God, what was this? It was White Sands National Park. The reason I'm using this example is I feel like it better highlights, as an example, log footage, what it looks like out of the camera, and the potential that you have to harness it and turn it into a more pleasing image. Log footage, for those of you who don't know, like I didn't know that not that long ago, when you look at it, it looks kind of foggy or hazy or incomplete. And the scientific way that we would talk about this, the objective way without getting tongue-tangled in all types of different descriptions, is that it lacks contrast and it lacks saturation. Saturation, fancy word for colors. The colors are a little bit muted, they're not as vibrant. Lacking contrast, meaning the differences between your black and whites are not as far as they could be. So if I look in here at this image, I don't see something being very starkly black, as well as I don't see things being pushed to the ultimate high of white. They're close, but there's still some range. But I understand that this can be confusing when you're just looking at an image like this and thinking, how am I seeing that? That just takes a little bit of practice. Some of you may see it, some of you may not. The way that we can all see it objectively is to look at scopes. Every editing program has this, every coloring program has this. I'm going to show you where they are in Final Cut right here. So a cool thing in Final Cut 10, at least in the current revision, is I can go to Workspaces in the window option here, and I can go to Color and Effects, and it's going to bring up my color panel. And by default, you know, you can show, it will show you different arrangements of how you want these divided. So what we can see, let's consider 0 to 100. 0 is black. Anything below that is destroyed and it'll just be black. 100 represents true white. Full disclaimer, I'm not a colorist. There's people that are out there that are a lot better than I am, and I'm going to recommend them to you. So if you consider 0 to be true black and you consider 100 to be true white, meaning anything that passes either one of those boundaries is just going to be what's called clipped, which means the information is going to be completely lost, and it's just going to be white anything beyond that and black anything beyond that on the other spectrum. What we can see in here in terms of contrast in all of our three channels, RGB, red, green, blue, is that we are not utilizing all of this range. So for example, we see a lot of data in here, but from say 0 to 15, nothing's being used, meaning nothing has yet reached true black. And you can see some of the black on her dress, some of the black in her glasses or her hair is not yet to that deep black. It's approaching that, but it's more of a charcoal, perhaps. And similarly, we don't have anything getting as bright as it possibly could. We're not fully utilizing that whole range. And the reason we do this in log is that it's all captured. It's just kind of compressed into this range for us to kind of stretch and pull and kind of manipulate to our taste. So though it requires some massaging in post, and sometimes a lot of massaging, you not only get the full range of your camera's sensor, you're able to allow more manipulation of the final look, the exposure, the contrast, everything, because not as much is baked in had it would be if you filmed in just a standard Rec 709 profile like we talked in the previous tutorial. To kind of illustrate this, if we were to use the standard built-in color corrector, I could go into this color board and I could go over to my exposure and I could look at my shadows, which are the lower part of this spectrum. You know, it's almost close to black, and I could start to pull these down to get closer to that. And you see when I toggle this on and off now, you can see that change where it kind of goes from incomplete to complete. And further, even though I just did the shadows, we can probably push these highlights up a little bit before, you know, I'd say about there. We also know that saturation, depending on the camera, is usually not is usually a little bit undersaturated in logs, so we can push a little bit into that. We don't want to go too far, then you get that type of look, but say we go up to about there. I still think I can crush a little bit more contrast into it, bringing that shadow down a little bit. When I toggle it on and off, you can see how much more that image comes to life. This is the log original, which is specifically called S-Log3 on the Sony FS7. Some people may say it looks like a good image, and I could see that, but, you know, does it really, you know, this really pops out and looks a lot more cinematic to me. Now, as we get to this point in Final Cut Pro natively, and when I say natively, I mean just using what comes with the program when you buy it, out of the box, so to speak, we start to kind of reach our limitations in the coloring aspect here. If I were to add another instance of this color correction natively, for example, and go in here and start to manipulate stuff in the colors, if I were to pull the shadows, you know, down to like a bluish, and take some of my highlights and go maybe into an orange, you know, I start to get some looks that some people may or may not, you know, prefer. Take maybe the contrast down a little more. You know, but I can see just a little bit of movement is really starting to kind of. I feel like my movements are very limited in what I can allow. So what I highly recommend is going to Color Grading Central, specifically Color Finale Pro. Now, this is a program that is paid that ranges anywhere from $99 to $149, but I can tell you it is worth its weight in gold. And I'll put a link for that in the description. And again, I get no money or anything for this. This is just me sharing with you what I've done in my journey. When I install it here specifically for Final Cut Pro, and I go into Color Finale, and I drag this instance into here, into my clip, I'm going to show you how cool this is, and how what I feel is much easier for me to work with. So again, I'm going to turn off these other correctors from before that we were using to show you the native example, and go right back to the drawing board with the image straight as it came out of the camera. Now I'm going to open up these controls, and I'm going to go to, for example, I'm going to go to my master curve right in here, where I can affect I can pull the shadows down right like this. I can pull my highlights up like that. I can even add a little more contrast if I want, with a standard S-curve type look. Maybe reduce that strength a little bit. Let's see here. I can add another instance, bring up my saturation to taste, like that. And some other really cool things. I can go into here and I can say the sky right here, kind of a purpley blue. I want to give it that Hollywood teal blue. So I'd go over to my hues, and I would choose within this blue range. And you can see how quickly I'm just doing these things for some looks. I can drag this down and start to get a little bit of that teal in the sky. And you can see if I toggle the sky on and off, from that purple to that blue, I think that adds a whole nother aspect of this thing looking pretty sweet. And I could even go over to my my hue versus saturation. I'm going to actually add another instance in here so it can be controlled. And I can say I just want that blue that I just put in, and I want to specifically increase the saturation or color strength in just that blue without affecting too much of anything else. I can do that. You can see it's just a subtle pop of that blue. Let's see if I look at her. I'm going to go over to my scope that shows my skin tones, actually. What I'm going to right now is what's called the vector scope. And the vector scope right here is showing me where the colors that are in this image predominantly, we have yellow, red, magenta, blue, cyan, green. That we can see we're starting to do this like kind of traditional teal and orange look, where you see colors up in the orangish area and down in the teal, and the length of these traces going is the strength of that color, the saturation of that color. So we have some pretty good saturation on both ends. And if just for the sake of illustration, you see if I were to push this saturation harder, it'd start to expand. Obviously, that's not a pleasing image right there, but I just wanted to show you for the sake, so I'll get rid of that. So from beyond this look, so if I were to get out here and I were to look at what we've done so far, I mean, this is what we started with, and this is what we went to, which I think is a look. I mean, not only did we add the contrast to take it from a log image to a contrasting image with saturation, but we also did just a subtle shift to this blue that I think really made it look more like something you'd see out of a movie. And one thing to remember when color grading are the 3 Ps, and those are my wife is pretty, my wife is perfect, and peanut. The other good thing about having color finale is that you can add what's called a LUT. A LUT is basically, I don't want to say an Instagram filter, but it's basically a look that has been created. If we were to look at all the steps of what we did to this image, I could basically save that type of look into a lookup table, or LUT, and import it into another project and have those same exact changes applied to the new image. Some considerations to consider with LUTs is sometimes from a faraway glance, they look a lot easier than they are. They are inherently easy, but it requires some thought. If you have an image that isn't white balanced, if you have an image that's underexposed or overexposed, and you just drop this LUT in, it's not gonna correct things that it assumed would be proper. A LUT will most often assume that the image is balanced in color. It will assume that it's exposed properly. If it isn't, you can still use the LUT, but you might want to upstream from that, correct the image so that it is balanced, it is white balanced, and it is exposed properly. So that, and then even once you apply the LUT, you may finesse it. Sometimes you'll see when you add a LUT, and you guys will find this, and don't panic, you'll drop something on, and it'll just be like black, or just dark blue, or, you think, what, this isn't what it looked like on the guy's tutorial. Well, that's because your image isn't set yet to what kind of neutral standards the colorist expected when he created that LUT. It sounds really fancy, and a lot of this is probably just going to be something that you'll understand with practice and playing around and probably screaming at your computer. But I'm going to show you an example. So if I go to this image right here that was from Timberline, and this image is, me with my brother-in-law sitting on Vance Creek Bridge in Shelton, Washington. Awesome, awesome, awesome bridge. And I'm going to show you, I made a LUT from DaVinci Resolve, which is what I colored the final product in, not this. This right here is just the log image. But in DaVinci Resolve, all of the different steps that I did to color grade that, I exported as a LUT. And I'm going to show you what happens if I just drop this into this without making any changes. So if I were to add Color Finale Pro, which I will use to import my LUT, or I guess, to apply my LUT, is a better way of saying that. And I choose this LUT option, and I'm going to add my BL, so Brett Lyon Timberline, specifically for the DJI Mavic Pro shot in D-Log. If I add that, we immediately see this blue image, and we're thinking, what is going on with that? Right? That does not look good. That is not the final product. That's certainly not what I would think someone might want to use the LUT for. Certainly not what was the look in Timberline. It's certainly not the intentions of this look. What is happening right now is that this was an image that was already basically too cool in the color temperature. I don't mean cool as in awesome. I mean cool as in the color temperature, cold, blue. It was already blue, so this image, which pushes more blue into it as a teal and orange type of LUT, made the thing just blue to an extreme level that is unusable. So I'm going to delete that, and we're going to look at this image, and it's kind of hard to see that it's blue, but if I look up, and let's go to one of these things. If we look at this, the measurements on the scope of this log footage, we can see that the blues are elevated. If this almost looks like a step up, you know, a staircase where your reds are really low, then your greens, then your blues. So it's clearly off balance, you know, especially when you see that everything kind of looks similar in this exposure, other than the fact that they're staggered almost in equal increments. There's a couple of ways you can do this. One is to balance it manually, and I'll show you that right now in Color Finale Pro. While the best thing would be to look at a white point, something white in your image, and balance to that, I don't have the luxury in this specific image because nothing really is white. Certainly nothing that I see. So what I would do in this image is I would try to do it manually. I'd say, well, I have bring the blue down here, and usually the gain is what you'll see is affecting that balance the most. So I'm going to go away from blue, which will start and go towards red. You can see I'm starting to bring that up where it's more equal. And now even in my shadows, I still have to bring that blue down, it looks like. So I'm going to go away from blue and towards red. Oops. And I'm getting more of these traces being balanced with one another. So now, if I were to apply that LUT, it's exactly what it looked like in the movie, Timberline. And I'll show you another way of doing that if we didn't want to do it this way. So, say we don't want to do the color correction and we want to look for the easy fix. You know, not the best way of doing it. I encourage everyone to understand the colors and the color balances and what is happening. If you truly want to start to really improve your color grading, I wouldn't be looking just for easy fixes. I would be pushing yourself and educating yourself and following people like like Denver Riddle at Color Grading Central that has great tutorials, great lessons that speak to people all from pro level down to beginners looking to be a pro or looking to just have fun. He'll be able to explain this a lot better than I do. Like I said, I'm not a colorist. Denver Riddle and the Color Finale crew are certainly colorists. But here is a little shortcut if you are using Final Cut Pro. You click on this little magic wand here, and it shows balanced color. And I want you to look, before I click that, over at this image that's kind of on this blue elevated side. And I hit it, and boom. And you see it. You see the image changed. And you can see these traces are pretty well balanced now. And again, if I were to add, in my instance of Color Finale Pro, I were to add my LUT for the BL Timberline for the DJI Mavic Pro shot in D-Log, boom, you have the same end result. And you can see when I scroll through this, you know, it's exactly the look from the movie. So let's go back to some of the other fun things that we can do with Color Finale Pro. just do my my standard, bring this log into a Rec 709 color space. See, I can start to talk that way with you guys, right? You guys can talk like that. You can talk cool. We're going to a Rec 709 color space, man. Taking that log and doing something with it. So say I come to here and I say that I'm at a good level there with my contrast. Add a little bit of saturation, not much. This Sony seems to already have a pretty good amount in it. And now let's say I want to add a LUT on top of this to give it a look. These are the Ascend LUTs that are all for sale as well by the Color Finale team. Show the gallery. Okay, so what I can do here, and this is pretty sweet as you can see, I can have a preview of each look before I apply the LUT while I'm looking through it. So right now I'm looking through all of the Ascend collection LUTs. We see you know, some really like cool looks, like here, like really wild looks. We see some more subtle looks, some vintage looks, all different things. And like here, let's say I like Spy. Ooh, I want to take a look at that. I just click on that and boom, here we have a look. How cool is that? And all I had to do was bring it into a Rec 709 color space and the LUT did the rest. Now that's pretty cool. So again, you know, these are just some basics of log exposure, LUTs, basic grading. And I strongly encourage you to be very careful of the terminology and instructions I gave, because again, I'm not a colorist. And I'm still learning a lot about color, but I strongly encourage you, if you are interested in this stuff and how to do it, to dive deeply into Color Grading Central, specifically Color Finale. Follow them on Facebook. Just look into it. And even before you buy, there's trials that they offer and stuff like that. But they have plenty of resources that you will find very valuable if that's what you're looking for. If you're just looking for this instant type of fix, you know, I don't know if I have any advice for you. I would still start with Color Finale and play around and start to learn, you know, just... You can, if you don't have sample files yourself, download sample files from the web. If you want sample files from me, I'll happily share some log footage so you can play around and just practice. But thanks a lot for watching, and thanks for bearing with me as I learn about these tutorial type of things and how to do them. Any suggestions will always help. Any request will be made into a video, and I will talk to you all soon.